Nice one, Sarah. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through what we're going to cover. So I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more detail. We're going to do a check-in, which is nice and safe and anonymous. We might do a word cloud or a poll or something like that. We're going to chat about the journey ahead for those who haven't yet moved, and there might be some who are here as well, but we'll chat about that, challenges and impacts. Don't want to get too caught up in the challenges, but we should understand them, and then we're going to talk about some solutions and some tips. If we have time, we'll talk about teenagers, because that was a specific question that somebody had asked. And then hopefully what's next, and a bit of a chat at the end, because there are some questions actually that people had sent in with the registration that I didn't know the answer to. So if we get time to get to them, I would love to hear from you guys if you guys have any experience on that. Okay, so that's what we're going to cover. I always have too much for these kind of talks, so I go pretty fast, but as I said, stop me, and we will go down into little tangents and rabbit holes if we want to. Okay, so a bit about myself. Moved to Sydney in 2000. Spent 16 years there, came home almost 7 years ago in 2016. In May, I'll be 7 years home, and I want to finish the book by then, because 7 years is enough to be thinking about this stuff and making the adjustment, I think. So I understand the challenges and the rewards, which I hope await you. I'm married to Anne-Marie, and I have 3 children, Ava, Erin, and James. They were 8, 6, and 3, respectively, when we came home. Ava is now 15, a teenager, and I'm glad she's home here at the end of the day. I love surf, sports, road trips. I'm a life coach, an agile coach, which is a software methodology, and project manager by background. I also do wellbeing, leadership, and performance programs, and it's all online. And I have a certificate in brain health and neuroscience. So as Sarah mentioned, I'm very curious about what's going on inside us, brain and heart. And that's really the interesting part for me, not so much the logistics. I don't want to underestimate what all the things that have to be sorted. But we're going to talk a little bit about the longer term happiness, I guess, pointers and factors. And I'm very passionate about life design, which is basically being very conscious about the type of life you want and making that happen. I use a little acronym AWE, which stands for Adventure, Wonder, and Experience. And it's just my little mantra for the type of life that I want. So that's a little bit about me. We're going to do a little check-in. I'm always a bit worried when I use technology, but I'm going to ask you guys to just check in and fill out a poll. So hopefully you guys are okay with the tech. I'm going to just send the link into the chat. Click on the link. You'll see 2 questions. One is, what's your number one? One is just what stage are you at? So it's going to give you a drop-down box. Just tell us which stage you're at. And the second question is, what's your number one challenge? Okay, so just give me 1 second, and I'll send you guys the link in the chat. And you guys fill it out, and I will show the answers on the screen once we have them. So hopefully that works. You'll see a little link, menti.com. Just click on that. It'll ask you the questions. What stage are you? And also, what's your number one challenge? And I'm going to see if I can bring up the answers. You guys seeing that and able to fill it in? It'll ask you, are you home and happy? Are you home and unsure? Are you home unhappy? Are you away and considering moving? Or are you something else? Maybe you can pop that into the chat. Is that working, Sarah? Can you see it?
It is.
Yes. All right. Beautiful. I'm going to pop it up onto the screen if I can. All right, we've got 2 people who are away and thinking about moving home. One person is home and not happy. Sorry to hear that. One person is home and still unsure, and one person is home and happy. You can count me in the blue as well. Okay, and the next question, hopefully you can see it, is what, sorry, hang on a second. Is beautiful. You've already filled it in. What is your number one challenge when it comes to reintegrating? Overseas property, fear of leaving. Yeah, people closed off to those returning, and career options not great. Yeah, we're away and I decided to move home. Yeah, connecting with family. Okay, so I'm gonna try and link back to these challenges as much as we can. We probably won't answer the challenge of overseas property, but we probably do another session on actually moving and those logistics and stuff like that. So this is going to mainly focus on when you are here, what are the challenges at reintegrating into the culture. But we might do another session on the logistics, like I think someone was asking about mortgages and overseas property and some of those. So I might do another session on those who have just got to the point where they've decided, and what are the things you need to do and how to solve those problems. Okay, so I'll try and link back to some of these. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slides. We'll do another poll in another 20 minutes or so, and it'll just be on solutions and things like that. Okay, so that's good to know. Thanks for that, guys. All right, so okay, so just a little bit about the journey. I guess this is all a little bit in hindsight, putting a bit of structure on what I've been through and what people go through. So I have this acronym called ADAPTERS, and it stands for the 8 phases of returning. So the first is awareness. It's when you become aware that maybe wherever you are is not the place that you want to be, or you miss home, or you might be in this phase for a few years, and then you reach the second phase, which is D for decision. You're really trying to decide. Okay, so you're like weighing up pros and cons. You've got this fear of leaving, you've got this fear of what you're landing in, and you're really possibly feeling overwhelmed during this phase, and you're trying to figure it out. But you make a decision at the end of that phase. And the third phase is anchor. So that's like locking in the key things that you need for your own security, for your own sanity, for your own well-being. And it's at the very early stages of the journey, and basically then you start to plan. Okay, so once you have, you know, the date that you're going to return, where you're going to live, you know that you can financially afford it, you're going to make a plan. So you can build your plan around your anchors, and then you start to move, you start to get a bit of momentum, a bit of traction. T is for transit. That's the point from when you have your plan to when you actually land in Ireland. And then, you know, a lot of your logistical problems are probably solved at this stage. For 6 months, maybe you're still in phase 6 orientation, which is, you know, setting up your new house so that you're secure and safe and everything else, setting up all your new life in Ireland. And then stage 7, which is where we're focused here today, is all about reintegration. And stage 8 then is shine, which is after that, right? So you hopefully have a brilliant life after that. So there are lots of challenges, and Sarah, you'll be familiar with this because it was a report that you guys did, coming home for good, and you know, you talk about the top challenges here. So you have lots of challenges here along the way. Okay, so you have finance and the cost of living, you have employment, you have accommodation, you have education. You see these problems are overlaid according to the time that you tend to meet them and tend to resolve them. So finance and cost of living is going to be a problem you need to think about up front, and you need to continue to think about that right up until you land. And then employment, accommodation, education, and schools and children. There you're probably what I'd say are your 4 anchors. You got to get them right, and then everything else will follow. There's obviously admin and insurance. So once you get into the plan and moving, there's lots of paperwork, lots of things you need to do. And then there's, when you land, the social support and emotional well-being. And this is where we're going to focus on reintegration to the new culture. Healthcare is obviously another challenge, social welfare, and weather and lifestyle, not to be underestimated from my point of view, public infrastructure, transport, and for some visa and immigration as well, right? So there's plenty of challenges, we know that, but it's good to put a label on them and list them out and think about, you know, where you are and how healthy you are in each of those areas. So that's the adapters model. At the end, phase 8, shine. Hopefully you get there in the end, and I really hope whoever said that they're home and they're not happy or home and unsure get to that point at some point. Okay, all right, so they're the challenges. That's the adapters model, I guess. And you know, to me, as I said before, probably touched on it, what you're worried about before you move are the logistics and all these challenges, but you'll solve all of those, and they might not be the things that determine your long-term happiness. I think you know, the reintegration part and your mindset and social support and emotional well-being and the things that they're on their 6 and 7 that we'll talk about today are probably very important. Although obviously, right, if you're broke or you don't have a house, you probably won't be happy. So I'm assuming here that you can resolve those problems, and you will resolve those problems. But yeah, you have to have a very basic standard of living or a feeling of security and safety at home before you can think about other things. Okay. Any questions? Just shout. I'll keep going. Otherwise, okay. Okay. So it is an emotional roller coaster. And through these 8 phases, you know, you might have a plan and might look like a straight line before you do it. And you say, I'll do this, and then this happens, and then this happens, and I'll be happy at the end. But actually what happens is you go all over the place. And, you know, you'll feel guilt, ache, immigrants ache, you'll feel doubt. You know, you see that on the word cloud there, we had words like fear. You know, so you're gonna then you're gonna believe that you can do it. Then, you know, you'll have a day where you feel helpless. You'll be motivated again, then you'll be stressed, you'll be excited when you decide and you're nearly coming home, and then you're frustrated when you land and you feel welcome, but then the next day again you feel hopeless, and then you feel safe, and then you feel inspired, and then you feel lonely, and hopefully at the end you feel optimistic. So that looks good, doesn't it? I hope I don't dwell too long on the challenges, but look, it's an emotional roller coaster, and you definitely can prepare for it. But I'd also say that there are just things that you have to live through and experience to have to understand exactly you know, what you have to go through. You can't anticipate everything, and you just have to have resilience, which we all do as human beings. We have the ability to adapt and go with the flow. Okay. And at some point you'll no longer be looking back, and hopefully that point is as early as possible. But if you haven't reached it yet and you're still unsure and you're still feeling a little bit down, there will be a point when you can look forward and the curve turns upwards. You just have to have a little bit of patience and a little bit of trust in yourself. All right, so we're talking about, you know, culture shock and reverse culture shock. So just want to go through what returning to Ireland is and what it isn't. So when you think about a return is going back to a place that you've been before, okay? But when you think about if you've been overseas and you're going back to Ireland, yeah, you are going back to the same place, but it's not the same time, right? So you're coming back to Ireland, it's a different time. So it's not really a return, and it's not the same people. You have changed, and the people you are going back to have changed. So it's not really a return. And I think the problem is, one of the problems is that people think about it as a return, when really it isn't. So that's the difference between culture shock and reverse culture shock. You know, you go to a new country, you're probably a bit more open-minded. You don't have any expectations. You're going there with a bit of a blank slate, and you're just learning a new culture. Whereas with Ireland, you have expectations. You have a preconceived idea of what it should be, and actually that is baggage that drags you down, and it's very hard to I guess untie yourself from some of those expectations. And that's why reverse culture shock, and there's a few books about reverse culture shock, and those type of experiences, for example, people who are posted overseas as part of their job and they come back and they struggle to settle, okay, because things happen to people who go overseas, so you create a new identity, you have new routines and practice, and you immerse yourself in the new country, and so by that very fact you become a new person. And when people think about home, I've thought about this a lot, and I've written a couple of articles about this, trying to figure it out myself, what is home. And I've settled on kind of home is just where my family is, but I didn't think about this really. But the essence of home is described in 3 key elements: familiar places, familiar people and routines, and predictable patterns of interaction. So it's actually just a feeling of comfort. You're used to the place and you like it and you know what to expect. And that's kind of the essence of what feels like home. I hope that makes sense to people. It certainly makes sense to me. But that whole go back to that point of, we think we're returning, but actually we're moving again. All right, so you have to have a mindset of we're moving again. This is a second move, not a return. Okay, so challenges. So returning is harder than emigrating the first time for the reasons that I've said, but let's go through 5 key things that happen, or 5 challenges that make it harder. Okay, so expectations, culture shock. Okay, so there's a gap between your expectations and the reality. Okay, so that's the thing, right? When you went away the first time, no expectations. This time you do. You expect things to be a certain way and they're not. Comparison. So you start to compare then your new life with your old life, and you've got this, what I call a shadow life. I've got my shadow life in Sydney. My brother still lives there. He sends pictures. He's out on the golf course, and I'm imagining myself there. Maybe I would be there. Maybe I wouldn't be, because I've got kids, might not have the time. Who knows? But I've got a shadow life. I imagine myself there, and it's a great life because that's what we do, right? Social media, things like that, encourage us to compare our low lights with someone else's highlights or some imaginary life. Okay, so that comparison is a challenge, and it's an unhealthy habit. So for the first year, I think I was back, I switched off social media, Facebook, everything else. Didn't look at Australia, didn't even keep in contact with some friends I had over there very well, purposely to protect myself. I'm not sure it was a good idea. It was just my strategy. I managed to reconnect. I mean, not that I fell out with anybody, but I'm reconnecting with them more. I'm going back to Australia this year. I feel like the 7-year itch. I feel like I'm ready to go back, and I'll be happy enough with that comparison. Okay, so change and grief. Okay, so this is a big thing. People don't really think about grief, right? Grief is not just a thing that happens when someone dies. Grief is a process that happens. It has very specific steps that happen when you're saying goodbye to something old and saying hello to something new. So we are undergoing change, and by its very nature, that is a challenge. So not only do you have all these logistical problems to solve, you also have the fact that you are coming into a brand new environment and you're having to learn all these new patterns and routines. And so you're going to experience grief at some level. Okay. So that's just a natural reaction as a result of change and leaving something behind and saying hello to something new. Then there's a reception. That is basically how you're received when you're home, how people treat you, and whether they're interested or not in your life, in your previous life, and everything else. Okay, so how Ireland and others respond to you. And there's a specific one here that recurs with people, and it's what I call the unacknowledged life, right? So when I find like that, as soon as I'm talking about something from 10 years ago, if I lived in Ireland 10 years ago, I'd just say, yeah, 10 years ago when I did this. But I find myself saying 10 years ago when I was in Sydney, and it's a very natural thing to say. And just before I reach the words in Sydney, I am almost apologetic. I'm almost reluctant to say I lived overseas because I feel like I'm banging on about it. But I also think I shouldn't be embarrassed by that. And I should not deny that, because it's just part of my life. It's not that I'm specifically talking about, hey, I went overseas, look at me. It's just that was part of my life. And it's very unhealthy for me to deny that part of my life. So I have like still kind of conscious of the fact that I'm talking about Sydney, but I'm not going to stop doing it, because that would be denying everything that's, you know, a part of my past that's made me who I am. And I would not deny any part of my past. So that unacknowledged life, people, like, you know, it's natural. People aren't as interested in something that they can't relate to. And that's, I think, what is happening. You know, they've not lived there. They can't picture it. Whereas if you say, you know, 5 years ago when I was down in, you know, this pub, they can picture you there or whatever, you know. But when you're talking about something that's so far away, they're not as interested, because they cannot picture it and they cannot be there with you. You know, and in the same way as if someone was describing to you what happened in Ireland while you were away, you probably wouldn't be that interested either. So that reception is a difficult one as well. Okay, and then relationships, again, this is kind of related to expectations and change, because we have expectations that relationships will just fall back into step. Well, it's a big myth that they will. Some will, some won't. And so that spans all of the above challenges, and it's a whole topic in itself. Okay, so there are probably 5 big challenges. And I think, you know, the bottom line is that you have the option to either change what you can. So yes, definitely, you know, be proactive, do things that you can to fix or overcome any of those challenges, right? So a very simple example is with relationships. If you don't think you're seeing enough people, you become the planner. You arrange meals, you arrange beers, you arrange events, you do whatever you think you can do to change that situation. And then if those things that you do don't change all the relationships, and there's specific relationships that don't get impacted by your efforts, then accept it. Just accept it. Not everything is going to work, and then focus your efforts on where it is working. And that's a very specific lesson I've learned. I've made massive efforts to reestablish relationships with people, and then I got to the point where not every single one was working, and that's okay. But it took me a while to get to point 2, which was to accept it and then move my attention to the ones that really worked, and let good stuff grow out of that. Other friendships grow out of that. Okay. Okay, so you have changed. So this is a little bit about how you have changed, or how you will change when you undertake this journey, if you do. Okay, so you obviously develop new attitudes, values, and perceptions. This is a little bit based on a book. I'll send an email after this. I'll send you the book. I haven't read it myself, but there's a summary of it online. So when people go overseas, they tend to see their home country more objectively. So, you know, you haven't been in Ireland for the whole time. So you've gone away, you've seen other things, what works, what doesn't, and then you can go back and go, yeah, Ireland's pretty good at that, and Ireland's not so good at that. So you're a little bit more objective about Ireland, hopefully. And you can see the validity of another country. So not everything, you know, you're not seeing everything through an Irish lens. You're seeing it through, you know, for me, it's you know, I'm Irish and I'm Australian, and I see the validity of both cultures, and I see the beauty in both. And it's also the price you pay for living in another beautiful country is, you know, you can see that Ireland could be better in certain areas, you know. So number 3 then is your idea of home is now unclear. And that is, I think, something you will probably need to live with. I haven't solved it. I'm constantly asking what's home. I'm sort of settled at the moment on what the definition is for me, but you know, it's not as simple as, well, here's where I live, that's it. It's, you know, it's home. I've always lived here, and that's it. So your idea of home is unclear, is probably just a condition that you will live with for the rest of your life. But it's worth it, right? You may place more value on relationships than others. So again, you know, when you come back, I guess people who've lived here all the time might have routines, might have relationships, or might be used to the way they live, and it might be busy. Whereas you're coming back for that reason, and you may place more value on the reestablishment of those relationships than others. So you might find that that's more important to you, and that's a good thing. It's just that you need to manage your expectations of what value others place on the relationships. And you will find people who place the same value on relationships than as you, and that's where you should focus your attention. So, I mean, I remember, Sarah, you asking me before the last webinar about challenges and my own experience, and you know, I was thinking about my parents, and I got quite emotional thinking about my parents. You know, my parents are at the age now where, you know, they value relationships and time with people over, for example, work, and that's a natural thing. You know, they have the time. So that's an example of people who value relationships the same way as I would, and that's been a real bonus for me. There are others there. You know, I have a couple of friends. I don't have a large number of friends, but the couple of friends that I have really value time and relationships and just spending quality time with one another. So that's really good. So focus on that as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about what has changed for you. And here's some cold facts before I want to get to the solutions, right? So just in terms of talking about reception in Ireland, here's 6 cold hard facts. I'm very sorry, I'm going to go through these really quickly. People are not as interested in hearing about your foreign life as you are in telling them about it. But still, talk about, if stuff naturally comes up in a conversation and you find yourself talking about your previous life, or your past, not your previous life, your past, in another country, do not shy away from it, okay? It's part of who you are, and you shouldn't shy away from it, but just people probably not as interested. You're not as interested in hearing about what's happened at home as they are in telling you. You miss the lifestyle and being abroad. You miss the celebrity status of being the one overseas. Now you don't stand out as much. You miss the social status that you may have enjoyed. Okay, so I think you might, your standard of living might change. Your you know, being different overseas, being you know, known as a hard Irish worker, those things, you might lose a little bit of that social status, and you might miss the supportive expat community. Obviously, when people go away, they tend to you know, the Irish tend to gather, and they have a pretty strong community. I don't think there is necessarily a strong returnees community yet, but maybe Sarah, you could comment on that, and it's something I'd like to explore. So yeah, you might miss that as well. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's something that lots of people would like, but yeah, it's not yet the case.
Okay, cool. Maybe something to explore for sure. All right, so there's 6 cold facts, and my question to you, or my challenge to you, is what are you going to do about it? Okay, so we got to be proactive all the time. You got to keep moving. Got to, you know, set your mind. Mindset is really important when you're doing this, or if you're home. Okay, cool. Okay, so impacts on well-being. This is a really important one. Okay, so again, this is based on research and a couple of books, but I'm just going to quickly run through these. Okay, so what may happen because you've changed is that even for insignificant problems, you'll start thinking this is so easy in the other place. You might find yourself a little bit more emotional, a little bit less objective, and you might take out your frustration. I've seen lots of comments. The Facebook groups can be good sometimes. Sometimes you just get people who are just complaining about stuff that they solved in the first place when they emigrated, and now they think it should be done for them when they come home, for example. So you tend to be a little bit more emotional, and maybe expect a little bit more. So judgment can be a challenge. Marginality then is that feeling of not belonging. You might feel a little bit at the margins. You are different. You have a new perspective. You might have a broader set of values, or a broader outlook on life, on cultures, less Irish, I guess, in a way. And it means you might never feel completely comfortable. again, that's possibly something that you have to live with, not being totally comfortable, but I think it's overall a good thing to have a broader perspective. Exhaustion. Okay, so you obviously, I'm talking about mental exhaustion here, which can lead to physical exhaustion, but there are two things happening when you decide to return home. Okay, you have additional cognitive load. Okay, so you have additional load on your brain because two things are happening. You have more work to do mentally just from settling in. You just have more tasks to do. You have more things to get done in the first 6 months when you come home to settle in. Okay, so that's logistical. And then your brain is actually learning new routines, new social norms. I remember the first 6 months I was home, I had a couple of run-ins with people because I'd completely forgotten social rules, and I had broken social rules with my family that I'd forgotten. And I was like, oh my God, I remember that now. That's what I'm meant to do when the family get together. And you know, I don't agree with doing it all the time, but I do it because it's more peaceful to do it. So things like that, you know, your brain is learning and it's doing more work. So that exhaustion is a real thing for the first while. And then there's resistance. So rather than adapting, you might, you know, coming from, for example, for me, Sydney to Dublin, I resisted, for example, seasons. I wanted to be, you know, I wanted it to be sunny all the time. I wanted to extend the summer as long as possible, and I still do to an extent, and I still want, you know, to find sun during the winter. But I have also, you know, started to enjoy the seasons, started to enjoy the change of seasons and stuff like that. So resistance can create stress in your body and in your mind. And rather than going with the new environment and settling in with new routines, you'll resist the change for a little bit. And so just be careful with that one as well. Okay, so their effects on our well-being. So be kind and patient with yourself and with others. Okay, solutions. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a poll. So I'm just going to pop out of here, and I'm going to send you another link. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So I'll send you that link, and it's going to have 2 questions. You guys know the drill by now because you were ahead of me the last time. So you should see that link. Let me just present. And it's going to ask you, what's the best thing you've done to reintegrate? Okay, so this is, I guess, mainly people who have come home. What's the best thing you've done to reintegrate? And the second question is, what's your favorite way to manage stress or well-being? If you haven't come back and you have an idea about what will be the best thing you've done, given everything we've talked about, add it in anyway, because it's nice to have a few words in the word cloud here. And I'm going to try and participate in this one myself. So I'm just going to bring it up so I can share. That link working, Sarah? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to stay on this one, then I'll ask the second one if you're waiting on the second one. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got some suggestions there on the screen. So stay in touch and understand concerns while still away. Definitely, yeah, always good to stay in touch with those at home, especially in the run up. When I was coming home, I had one guy who I used to work with, and I didn't actually know him that well, but I would I contacted him, and he was about 6 months ahead of me coming home, and I contacted him and had a chat about coming home, and then I stayed in touch with him, and the relationship we had was good because he was a bit more objective. He wasn't family, he wasn't close. He was able to give me a very balanced, objective view of the challenges ahead and of what was good and what was bad and all the rest of it. So that was good. He's not I wouldn't even call him a friend. I don't keep in touch with him anymore. I just worked with him, happened to follow him home, you know, in terms of time, and it was really good. So if you can find someone who can be objective and not too emotionally involved in your story, who's done it, it's a really useful thing. So that's good. Stay in touch. Work with other foreigners living here. Yeah, do exactly what you did when you first went away. Most of my friends in Sydney were I met through playing football, playing sports. All the lads that play football together. Despite, like, I really wanted to get to know more Aussies, and I got to know loads of Aussies and become friends with Aussies through work, but that's not as sticky a relationship as sports and natural friends who come out of socializing and stuff like that. And most of the people I played football with were Irish or English. But anyway, lots of friends out of that. So joining clubs and local groups in the community, great way to reintegrate. GRIT is my one. I can talk to that one. That's an acronym, and it stands for gratitude. Actually, when I first created that little mantra for myself, it stood for gratitude, relentlessness, intention, trust. Because at the first 6 months at home is when I started to use it, and I was struggling with finding the work that I wanted. So I wanted to just continue to be relentless and not give up and everything else. But now I've changed that to just relax, go with the flow a bit more, and accept things I can't change and work on things that I can. So that stands for gratitude, relax, intention, which is setting goals, setting an intention, and to have an enjoyable life and trusting everything will be okay. Stop talking about being away. That's curious. Yeah, that is one option, and you tend to maybe talk less about being away. I'm curious, maybe we can explore if that works or not. I wouldn't like to stop talking about my past life, but yeah, maybe stop. Yeah, I mean, there's a balance, I guess. Not back yet. I think it would be reaching out to new friends, make new friends. Yeah, definitely. Like I started, even for work reasons. I think I started to connect with all my old colleagues in Ireland. I think I went from 450 LinkedIn connections to 1,000 in the 6 months before I came back, and it was like just reconnecting with everybody. So definitely a good idea. Reach out to friends, but you know, have that one friend at the end of the phone who you can talk to. It doesn't take a large number. Just have one or two people that you can really trust and chat to about how you're going. Okay. I'm just going to see if the next slide. Okay, so what is your favorite way to manage stress or well-being? Okay, cool. So 2 words here, 2 favorite things maybe. Manage stress. And I'm just going to put in mine. Alrighty, beautiful. Get outdoors, connect with friends, exercise, connect with others, talk, walk, meditation. Beautiful. Okay, you guys already know this. Okay, so I think the key thing here is that when you get home, just keep doing this one thing every day for you. Make sure that you're consistent with your routines, and you will be you will be fine. Okay, so probably the biggest thing for me is I stopped playing football when I came home, and I never thought I would, but I joined my brother-in-law's gym, and so I exercise every morning and go for a swim in the sea if I can. And so that's probably the one thing. And then the other thing is, at the end of the day, gratitude journal. Very kind of corny, coachy concept, but it works. It keeps you positive. And also, actually, just by writing down things in a journal, it slows your brain down. So like what's happening in your neurobiological processes is, by writing, you're actually getting away from screens, getting away from distractions, and you are using the front part of your brain, the executive decision-making part of your brain, prefrontal cortex, just behind your forehead. So that's the part that lights up when you're writing. It slows you down. Stress can't happen when you're doing that. And also, when you're writing down your thoughts, for me anyway, I ended up complaining about things maybe on paper, but then also looking at them and saying, really, what are you going to do about it, and asking me, and you come up with solutions as well. Okay, so you basically give yourself a pep talk, and give yourself a bit of a kick in the backside, and start to do something about it as well. So that's a good exercise to do. Doesn't take long. Just write down 3 or 4 things you enjoyed today, and if you think of challenges, write them down as well, and the solutions will come. Okay, so it's a little bit about well-being. I'm just going to go back to the slides. I want to finish this last few minutes, and then hopefully open it up for a quick chat as well. Okay. All right, so that's some solutions. Here's a few tips. We probably covered a lot of this. Okay, number 1, mindset. Forget the return. It's about change, but also don't just think about it as, oh, this is a hard change. Think about beyond that. Think about adventure. Think about the opportunities you have to, write a new chapter. This is a blank canvas. Set your mind to it. If your heart has decided that Ireland is where you want to be, then the next thing is mindset. Accept what you cannot change. Reduce attachment. So don't get hung up on things that aren't working. Focus, move your spotlight to the things that work, and just keep doing them. Okay, don't get attached to the things that don't. Be really kind to yourself. This is a hard time, hard challenge, and be patient. I remember I met Andre, who's an old friend from school. We lived next door. We were great friends. We lost contact when I was away, and came back, and I'd start to go for a cycle with him. And I remember one time I was complaining about all sorts of things, the weather, everything. And he just said to me, relax. You're in the right place. Be patient with yourself. So they're his words, not mine. Be patient with yourself. You're in the right place. Be true to yourself as well. Okay, so know your values. Don't apologize for having lived overseas. Don't completely stop talking about it. Talk about it if it occurs as a natural part of a conversation, and something pops into your head about something that happened overseas. Say it. Be true to yourself. Be patient with others as well. So it's not just you adjusting. And I noticed this as well when my parents were constantly asking me how I was, and I'd tell them, and then I think my dad said to me, it's not just you. It's we're also getting used to having you home. It's great, but we don't, we haven't seen you in 16 years. We don't know what to do with you. You're like, so it's quite interesting that it's not just you, and you might forget that sometimes. Find routine as quickly as possible. So those things that we were just talking about, getting outdoors, morning, exercise, or whatever it is, the routines that serve you well right now, get them in, get them sorted as soon as you arrive back, and stick to those routines and those rituals that are really good for you. Focus on what works. That's the foundation on which things will grow. And my friend Andre, I just have this expression, hold on to your Andres. If you have 1 or 2 good friends, hold on to them, and meet them as often as you can. Set something in the calendar so that it's not too long between meetings. People in Ireland are busy. With Andre, he never organizes anything. I organize everything, and I don't care because it works. Okay, so family and friends, become the planner. Accept as many invites that are practical in the community. I'm going to send a few resources for this, but sports teams, clubs, your daily routine, getting out. You never know who you're going to meet. Volunteer or charity work, adult education, local events, interest-based meetups. You know, I joined Surf in Ireland when I first came back, and things like that. Anything you're interested in, look at Meetup, look at Facebook, see if there's anything worth joining. I actually even saw friendship apps. There's one called, I presume it stands for Best Friend Finder, bffinder.ie. I can't vouch for how good or bad that is, but anyway, there's apps there. And then in work, you know, COVID, some of us work from home, and I work from home. It's less social, but when you get a chance, go into the office, work with teams as opposed to on your own if you can. And if you're working on your own, then go pop into, you know, I pop into the local parish centre to do a bit of work just for company, use shared workspaces, things like that. And there's obviously networking and LinkedIn groups. Start that now. If you're thinking about coming home, start to reconnect on LinkedIn, find all your second degree connections, all the people you used to work with, all the rest of it, reconnect. Have a 7-day reintegration challenge starting in March, hopefully. So check that out if you want to take a 7-day challenge to help you to reintegrate for those who are home. Okay, so that's some social tips. Conscious of time, does anyone on the call want to have teenagers and want to talk about that, or are we comfortable skipping that? Because I want to open it up to any other questions. Okay, I'm going to skip teenagers unless anyone puts in the chat that they have teenagers. Teenagers are just a bigger challenge for children. We might do a separate session on children at some stage, because it definitely is. There's different bigger challenges for teenagers, and there's different stages of psychological development for children as well. So I'll send this around in the slides. If anybody here wants a session on children, I'll probably do one in the next few months anyway. So I'm gonna cool. All right, Anne, you'd love another session. Yeah, we'll do a session on kids, because that's a whole interesting. We'll do a bit of neuroscience, a bit of brain development. It's a very interesting topic. Cool. So we'll do another session on that. So I just want to cover this, and then we'll open it up to chat. Okay, so what to do next? So just for, if you want to check out on new Dawn in Ireland programs, have 3 different programs. Okay, undecided. If you're undecided, there's a program, very short micro course, I call it. So you know, it's basically 7 days of exercises that you do to get you to the right decision, hopefully. That's a really hard one. You know, that takes time. I think there's a couple of people on this call who are in the throes of trying to decide. So it's very, very hard, but hopefully the tools in that help you to decide. Then if you're moving, there's a longer program called the New Dawn in Ireland Coaching Program. And if you are returned as that 7-day integration challenge, they're all at newdawnireland.com programs. So if you're interested in any of them, obviously on the right, there's the Facebook group. The book is hopefully finished in the next couple of months, and that'll be on the website. And I'm going to organize one of these on a different topic, probably every month. So, you know, 10 or so this year. And I'll put the next one up on events in the next couple of days. So that's some things you can do next. So you don't need to do it on your own. You don't need to participate in any of these programs either. If you have 1 or 2 people who you already know who've done this, just pick up the phone, call them, and have chats. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. I've done a lot of talking, so I apologize for monopolizing the conversation. But are there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen.